Morning, everyone, and welcome to the September 1st, 2020 meeting of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. Happy September. Here in the room for the work session, I'm Catherine Harrington, Chair of the Washington County Board, Vice Chair Commissioner Dick Scouten, Commissioner Roy Rogers, and Commissioner Jerry Willey. Commissioner Pam Treese is excused. The first item on our agenda today is board and leadership communications. Who would like to go first?
Well, I don't have too much to report, so maybe I'll just start first. Finished up, on all of us to some degree or another, were certainly involved. Finished up the last of our listening sessions. I think I went to 5 of the 6. It was challenging. It's good. It was an opportunity, I think, to get beyond just the topic that we started with. That was a starting point, but that was not intended. So we did have some good free-ranging discussions. Look forward to the summations and the reports that follow. I'm glad we did. I think it was hard. It was challenging. And the 6th one really started to feel like that was, there's just a lot, but it was a good effort, and I'm glad I participated in it as I should. Other than that, I'm really looking forward to the tour of the Wingspan on Thursday. I think that's at 1 p.m. I will be there for that. That's been a long time in coming. And that's really about it for me.
Thank you, commissioners. Anything else from commissioners?
I was just complimenting Commissioner Willey on his TV appearance once again. He was on Channel 12 on a couple of different times in regard to business loans. He did a nice job, so that was good. And Diane, I would, as you know, I did that tour of Durham on Friday. We very quick. We happened to be my wife and I in an Indian restaurant in Beaverton we happened to like, and ran into this young lady who was sitting by herself, and we just got to conversation. And she is from India, but she's from Ohio State, getting her doctorate in membrane technology. And so she was interested in seeing the Durham plant. And the thing that I would say to you is that I've been through Durham a bazillion times and know the folks, obviously, but the passion they have for the industry is really heartening. I mean, it's just great attitudes, and everybody's very positive, and I think it gave her a very not that we'll ever see her again in our lifetime, but I have a feeling that she's a pretty smart girl, and she's doing some interesting work. So it's interesting to hear about her culture as well. And Dick, I do agree with you. I didn't get to attend all of them, the listening sessions, but sometimes the message was pretty hard and not all that pleasant. I wish that there were a few more people in attendance. I mean, it was a little bit small in terms of sampling size, but good. And then my last thing I just say, and I sent a message, you probably saw it, to Pat Garrett. Difficult times. He's made a tough decision, and I happen to support him. And it's very difficult for those of us been around for a while. We are still smarting, as you saw the last time we were asked to assist Portland, and they were in the command position, put our guys in a difficult position. We got sued, and they wouldn't indemnify us or even help us. So I mean, not a great way to go in, but I do feel very, very sorry for the folks and the officers in Portland. They got a tough job, and they're really trying to do it, and the morale over there is not the best. So sorry we have to be where we are, but we've got to represent our own citizens. So that's it.
Commissioner Willey?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Roy, for that shout out for Channel 12. That was a fun thing that we did yesterday. I do those. I don't watch myself. That's too embarrassing for me to do that. We also tried, KXL's trying to reach out, and so we're going to try and connect up with them today as well. Tricia Mortal and I did the Rotary thing last Thursday over the Rotary Luncheon, and I think that went really well, lots of questions, and she did a great job presenting an update on the COVID-19. And then Friday was the WEA Golf Day. And so that was a long day of being out on the links. Darn it, it's really hard when you have to do that. But that was a good event too. And I want to say congrats to Pam on getting that event done before she had her unfortunate bike accident. So anyway, and yeah, the listening sessions have been very educational for me. So I'm anxious for us to have an opportunity to discuss amongst the commission here about what we heard.
Yes, thank you to my colleagues for participating in those listening sessions. I think we've gotten some an array of feedback on a wide range of subjects, but particularly body-worn cameras. We are expected to have a report from the consultant team as part of the packet that is published for the September 22nd meeting. So as we all know, that packet gets published about a week in advance. So it takes them a couple weeks. They've been working on combining all the feedback and input thus far. So I think we'll have a good discussion on September 22nd, and then we can decide where to go from there. But it also gives us some further insight into how to potentially go about setting up the community investment conversations for October, and to see how to use information so that our budget is more approachable, better understood by our community, and then to have breakout sessions as well. We learned a bunch last year when we had our first budget listening session last year as well. That was in person, however. So the dynamics are a little bit different in person. You're able to present a little bit differently. But we move with the times. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers, for mentioning Sheriff Garrett's response. So on Saturday night, there was Saturday late in the afternoon and into the evening, there was quite a clash of protesters in downtown Portland. And with that, a person was killed, which is very unfortunate. In response, that evening and into the next day, Governor Brown and Mayor Wheeler from Portland and others had discussions about what we might be able to do to end the violence in Portland around protests and to advance things moving forward. As I think a lot of people have had the opportunity to see, Mayor Wheeler spoke on Sunday night, and President Trump, while Mayor Wheeler was speaking, was responding through tweets. You can go online and look at that if you'd like. Governor Brown called me early Sunday evening and asked us to consider supporting our sheriff in looking into support for the Portland Police Bureau as they are having great difficulties with their staffing and in making sure that they are covered all across the city, let alone to try and keep protesting groups separated. So yesterday was, so I called Sheriff Garrett Sunday night, obviously. It's what you do when you have good collaborative working relationships, right? So there were many discussions yesterday. We've each received a media release from the Association of Chiefs of Police, as well as the Oregon State Sheriff's Association. The sheriffs from our 3 counties came together, as well as the police chief for the city of Gresham, and the Washington County chiefs have had discussions. With staff's help, I convened a meeting with the Washington County mayors yesterday afternoon to discuss the situation with them. There is obvious concern, not only from the sheriff and his team, but also throughout elected officials here in Washington County, that some of these protests are being planned not just in the central city, but also in the suburbs. And we know that our own sheriff's department is quite lean in terms of its staffing as well. So there are concerns all over the place for how do we make sure, especially in these times of COVID, that we have coverage where we need to have coverage. So the governor made two asks. One was to convene with our law enforcement peers to explore support. The sheriff has done that. We have the results of that. And I believe that we support him in that as well. I know I do. Then secondly, she's asking us all to come together in a collective call to end the violence. So yesterday, in my meeting with the mayors here in Washington County, I talked to them extensively. Now I realize that there are many shades of gray, and there are some on the edges that aren't going to listen to what we have to say, right? And that's their choice. But at the same time, given that these many shades of gray, while I certainly support people's right to protest, I also don't want people to be hurt, nor do I want them to put themselves in the path of destruction. So yesterday evening, early evening, before the listening session, thank you for handling the introductions, Commissioner Willie. In the Tri-County Chair meeting, we invited the sheriffs and we had a really good discussion. Out of that, we're going to be setting up a meeting with the district attorney of Multnomah County, because part of the concern is that people who are being arrested as part of the protest violence are being released in their own recognizance and turning right around, and we're seeing an escalation of violence. And we've, just this morning, I read about intimidation that had been done at a business in Seaside. So it's happening no matter what size your community is. So our staff is going to be helping craft up a letter, and I'll circulate that to all of you, and we can further discuss it to see how we can use our elected leadership to ask people to stay safe, stay out of the way. Let's try to de-escalate the situation and advance our community as we move forward. So that's the situation update as I know it this Tuesday morning, September 1st. Thoughts?
Just my thought is I agree. I think it would be good to have some positive, not negative, but positive message. And I would hope that we might be able to weave into that message, that we also have great sympathy and empathy for our folks in Multnomah County, City of Portland Police Force. I was listening to the news this morning, and the wives and kids are getting harassed too of police officers. That's not the way you play. March all day, that's fine, but when you start destroying people's businesses and you start intimidating those who are there to protect us, that's just not right. So, if it's a positive message, I agree. I think it'd be important.
Yeah, I was in on a meeting. This has been probably 3 or 4 weeks ago with some very large landholders downtown, and they were saying that many of their businesses are leaving for the suburbs, and that the ones that are staying have to hire security. And yeah, this would be what I'd refer to as a law of diminishing returns. This has lasted far too long, and to me has actually turning, I think, people generally against any kind of these kind of platforms, and that's a negative thing. So we've got to do whatever we can, I think, to help out. But there have been several major anchor tenants downtown Portland that have indicated they are not going to reopen, and it's going to be years before the Portland we knew will be back again, and that's a sad thing. I think we need to take that, do whatever we can to try and reinvigorate our downtown core.
And that, thank you for mentioning that. It really does concern me because we know what happened to the city of Detroit over the course of decline, and we don't want to decline. We need a strong central city and a central downtown. We do better together. So we've got our thinking caps on to figure out how we can go about doing that while also understanding what our circumstances are all across not only Washington County, not only our region, but also our state. So stay tuned. We'll further collaborate on that. So the second topic I wanted to make sure I touched bases with you on is the Get Moving 2020 measure. We wrote a letter of support in June for that measure. I have a copy of it here somewhere so that I can reference that. Tomorrow morning is a special Westside Economic Alliance board meeting. They're contemplating their position on the referral. The chair of the board made an effort to contact each one of us who are governmental representatives to that board to ask us to actively participate in that. So I know we've endorsed the proposal. I just want to check in with you and make sure that we're seeking to have a discussion tomorrow that will be a positive one and that will address the near-term question as well as longer-term relationships. But I wanted to make sure that I touched bases with you all as well in advance of that discussion. It could turn out that the board decides to stay neutral on the position, on the referral, or otherwise.
I still believe we should be supporting this measure. There's never a perfect time to raise some taxes to pay for whatever it might be, but these are important public improvements. They're a foundation for our future, and I think we should stay the course.
Commissioner Willie?
Well, yeah, I'm in supportive of the concept, I guess, of certainly the projects that they have been approved and has gone through a 2-year process or something. It was a long trek. I am not supportive of the funding mechanism. I am not supportive of the timing. So I just think it's another burden on our businesses that they can't afford right now, and certainly they cannot stand. And so we've got to come up with some other better way of funding our transportation projects rather than putting the burden entirely on our business. And so I'm in opposition of this initiative.
Well, we're not putting the burden entirely on the business. I mean, transportation is funded by a lot of different sources. That's just, we're all contributing to it, right? But it isn't entirely on the business.
This particular one is funded by a payroll tax.
Yes, I understand.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I know we fund them through gas tax and a variety of other sources.
Property
I get
tax
that.
in this county.
But this particular one is 100% funded by a payroll tax. That's what I'm in opposition to.
I do want to note that in our letter of June 24th, we knew of the funding mechanism then as well.
Well, no secret, I've already endorsed the measure, but personally, as well as around the table. But I concur with Commissioner Willey's concern. The projects are good. It's as you know, being applied to only certain businesses, and those are the businesses I know I've personally gotten phone calls from, our largest employers. It's unfortunate it's not spread differently, but it is what it is. And so I'm not going to change my support, but I do share, Jerry, you've made a good point, and I know they are too. And so it's very difficult, I think, for our fellow Commissioner Pam Trees to be on a much divided board that she's the CEO of. And so it'll be interesting. So I think it's an individual. I let the public decide.
I continue to support the measure. Like Commissioner Rogers, I have endorsed this measure. I wanted to make sure that I checked in once again before participating in the board meeting tomorrow. So thank you very much for the discussion today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I had signed the formal endorsement form and SEL form as well.
Thank you. All righty, that's it for Commissioner Communications, Leadership Communications.
Good morning. I don't have any updates. This last week has been a lot of listening and learning, and I continue to be impressed by the dedication, professionalism of the staff of Washington County, and starting to connect with community members as well. So more updates to come.
Ooh, our new CAO, starting week 2, your first full month with us. We continue to be thrilled, and congratulations on the announcement of the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Latricia Tillman, who will be joining us September 16th, I think it is.
That is correct, and we will look at scheduling a formal introduction at a board meeting.
Terrific, thank you. Another member of our rock-solid team, thank you.
Nothing to report here.
Okay, thank you. Diane, welcome.
Good morning. We had a very good meeting with the Bureau of Reclamation. It's what we would normally do when we go back to Washington, D.C., and I want to thank you to the chair and to our regional partners, and also acknowledge Mark Jockers and Tom Vanderplaat. We met with Commissioner Brenda Berman and her team. It's really great to see that she shows a personal interest in our water supply project. We have a clear agenda of work to do for funding, appropriations, and authorizations, and we clearly see what we need to do. And the schedule of the project being constructed in 2029 fits, I think, within the Bureau's program. There's lots of projects that they're trying to fund, and they have a very large project that's already under construction down in California. So we're going to have to keep at this to keep our project as a priority, but thank you, Chair, for that. And I think we're moving in a good direction. They're waiting for an economic study that we're doing in January, and this is a very critical one because as the dam's timeline is long, there is a safety issue that needs to be addressed, and there's only 2 ways to do it. It's to do it with water, which is a reservoir restriction, which we believe is economically devastating to this region, and that's what the economic study will be able to show, and the Bureau is very interested in it. The only other strategy is to remove the downstream risks of people, so we're going to be looking at both strategies to help with the safety issue. And I've told the chair that that's one of the things I don't sleep at night very well with, is the ongoing risk with that, with the dam and the reservoir. The People for Protecting People is going really well. I just got a report from the BRCs. They distributed about 75,000 different pieces of PPE. They fulfilled about 433 different orders, so they're feeling very well supported. It's interesting, almost 26% are the service industries that are needing help, and childcare makes up 27%. We did get a request for additional PPE as it relates to gloves, so we'll work with the EOC, and if the EOC is unable to distribute those, we'll look at a supply to bring in. But there's smocks, which is interesting. So I've asked them for a picture of the smocks that they're needing to for childcare. So that seems to be a pretty big emphasis. But KN95 masks from the county was very important through the EOC, and the hand sanitizer. They're very thankful for all of that. So that's going very well. And I think Mark Jockers reported on the agricultural distribution last week.
Is a smock different than a gown?
I think so. I think so. From what they were describing, it's different than the medical gown. So we'll get a look at what they need for the childcare folks. The UB Assistance Program was launched under CARES, and again, Mark Jockers and his team, the cities, and all of the partners. It's going well. We'll probably hear a report at the end of September to see how many people took advantage of the program, and we're very thankful to the board and to the county for distributing those care funds. Very much needed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions with regard to today's formal agenda, which does have a few updates? So why don't I make sure we've all noted those. Item 7B, under Housing Services, to approve the Metro Affordable Housing Bond concept endorsement has moved from the consent agenda to the action agenda, making sure our public has the opportunity of our really strong story. On the consent agenda, item F has been added, grant waiver to request for proposal process and authorize personal services contract amendment with Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon, also known as MISO, for the Child Care Assistance Program. We talked about that in, gosh, was that just work session last week? Whew, feels like 2 weeks ago. The original item F was changed to an action item. And then under support services, we have item H, to authorize the contract and issuance of purchase order for the TriMet Universal Annual Pass Program. Are there any questions on that or any of the other items on the agenda? Okay, thank you all for continuing to invest in reading our packets ahead of time. I appreciate it. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to dive right into the various topics for our work session agenda. And the first one is an update on Emergency Medical System EMS Code 8.32. And we welcome both Marnie Kyle, our Director of Health and Human Services, and Brad Anderson from our legal team. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Board. So this is just a quick update because there is a board agenda item later this morning. Wanted to make sure you had a chance to ask any questions. It's pretty simple today. So just as a reminder, next slide, please. Just a quick reminder, Chapter 8.32 is our EMS code chapter. It authorizes the county to regulate emergency ambulance, non-emergency ambulance, and wheelchair transport for hire, ensures protection of health, safety, and welfare of persons needing services through local regulation to promote efficient, effective, and safe transportation. And by the way, I asked Brad to come up with me in case you have any tough legal questions around this, so.
We got your back.
Yes, he does. He always has our back. And then the chapter also communicates county value to have a uniform, countywide system delivery of emergency medical services and development of a comprehensive approach to care assessment and cost containment. So just wanted to do a quick reminder of what we're talking about today. So next slide. So what we're asking you to do later this morning is to approve code changes. The purposes of these code changes today are pretty simple, but I'm also going to go through a timeline of how we got here today. But we're really just removing the reference to the board-appointed EMS Advisory Council and wanted to provide a transparent description of the new EMS alliance that you approved last year. This does not do anything to change EMS regulatory or franchise agreements at this time. So we'll go through the timeline real quick. So February 2019 was the, you appointed EMS Advisory Council members. And then in April, you adopted the first thing that the Advisory Council kind of tackled was what is the foundational principles that we want to see in our EMS system. And so they worked on that together, and you adopted those foundational principles in April of 2019. And then in July of 2019, the board adopted some minimal administrative rule changes, really to ensure that we had consistency with state regulations, because it had been quite a while. We needed to make sure that the language in the franchise agreement and the contract or the administrative rules matched. We needed to update the insurance requirements to meet county standards, and then we needed to update language regarding our online medical control. So those were really just administrative changes that we did back in July. And then lots of things got slowed down, as you can imagine, and so we then in September 10th of last year, 2019, this board approved an IGA to form the EMS Alliance. So just as a reminder, the EMS Alliance includes City of Hillsborough, Forest Grove, the Banks Fire District number 13, TVF&R, and as the rural fire protection district. And the mission of the Alliance is to maintain and enhance a safe and effective EMS system. So you might remember we talked a lot about moving from a sort of a disjointed set of services by the private ambulance company, the fire department, the hospitals, to more of a comprehensive system where we're all working together. So the next slide, please. So the idea of the alliance would really help governance, the governance agencies that we just talked about, really have shared authority for the system improvement and enhancement. The governance agencies would also all contribute and participate in coordinated activities. The things that we want to tackle together include quality improvement, training, and compliance with metrics. Increased system transparency, that was a really important reason that we wanted to move from the advisory council to this shared governance model. It would also create a smaller policy group, and the hope was that we would move things along quicker. COVID has put a little kink in that goal. System complaints and issues really would focus on system quality improvement versus, to be honest, some of the finger pointing that was going on before this. And then support strengths and assets of the current system, coordinated medical direction, and collaboration with our hospitals. So that brings us up to today. And again, what we're asking for is approval of the code changes which remove, and you have a red line version in your packet. It just really removes the references to the EMS Advisory Council and provides a description of the new EMS Alliance at the level of the role. In the future, the EMS Alliance has been meeting since last September. Well, I think was it in September right away that we started? I'm looking at Sia. Sia is the first chair of the Alliance, and so she's been facilitating those meetings on behalf of the county. But the Alliance has been meeting, and so they are going to be working on what changes would they like to see. And then we know that there are a lot of changes that we need to make to update the code. So at some point in the future, we're still targeting early 2021. And as Tricia told me yesterday, as long as we're not slammed down again by COVID, we should be on target to bring those changes in early '21. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions, and have Brad, just in case you have tough questions. And also Tricia's in the audience.
Commissioners, any questions? Oh, I do.
Okay.
Once again, we've got a recommendation for narrow changes. Just like last year, I have some issues with the way this code is set up. While I just heard that at some point in the future, hopefully in early 2021, there will be changes, I want to make sure that we are considering those changes from policy discussion from this board and not just from bottoms up. And I've shared my concerns with the CAO. My biggest issue is that in the code, it is documenting a sole provider. That is a contract term, and I don't think we should be making contract terms in our code. It's really a business decision whether or not we have a sole franchise or multiple franchises. The other thing, more to this point on the EMS Council, the red line version that I had access to doesn't have an outline of or definition of who the EMS Alliance membership is. And therefore, there's no public place for people to go that I'm aware of for what makes up the EMS Alliance. And so for today's business agenda, to me, that's a showstopper. I mean, you've got to have a listing somewhere of who this committee and alliance definition is. It's a real transparency issue because our public doesn't have access. I mean, they can't go to our website now and find out, have access to IGAs.
The IGA is posted on our public EMS page website.
So how are you suggesting that members know how to find, members of our public can find out who is on the EMS Alliance?
I think that they can go to our website and it's,
Have to know to click on an
Yeah.
IGA.
no, I think your point's well taken, and, you know, we will be doing other updates to the code, and so I think that your point's well taken. I'm not sure if part of the reason we didn't put the membership in the code is to give ourselves an opportunity to add to that. I mean, I guess that's a Brad question, but.
Right, the IGA is set up so that the city of Hillsborough, for example, determines who their representative is on that
Right,
alliance.
so the code would have that there is a City of Hillsborough representative.
Correct.
Not who that is.
Correct.
And that's what I'm looking for.
And that point's well taken. We can add that with the next update,
Well, so,
assuming this.
so this will come back before the board. This isn't the time where you're actually making code changes. This is Marnie's opportunity to tell you, this is what we're proposing. And actually, you're going to see this as an actual ordinance amendment in about a month's time. So we will take those comments back and actually look at the proposed language changes and see if that we need to do some more tinkering with it.
So could we go back one slide? No, I thought there was a different one that talked about the action today.
Well, so the action today that's before the board is to allow county council to propose code amendment changes. So this, we do this so that the board has an opportunity to say, yeah, we're interested in going forward with changes, or no, we're not. And we've had a number of times where the board said, yeah, we want to table this item. And so we don't want to spend a lot of energy on something before we get a head nod from the board to pursue this. So that's what's actually the agenda item for the board today.
And I heard, just to be clear, I heard that you would like us to bring back a section that includes the membership, the Alliance membership. Yes.
So what I want to make sure is that in voting today to authorize the filing of an ordinance amending the EMS code, that it would be an updated version of the code, not what was proposed and in our packet for today. That's my point.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
I have to admit, I didn't understand what you were asking them. So give me a little bit more of what she just asked and from the packet we got today versus what you're going to do.
So the packet that you received today with the red line proposed changes for today does not include the addition of the Alliance membership. So clearly describing who's a part of the Alliance, which
What
was,
positions are part of the
right.
alliance?
So the
That's
city
a
of
great idea. I
Hillsborough,
like that
Forest
idea.
Grove,
What was the
right.
second part, though, that she was asking? I thought there was a two-part ask. 'Cause I completely agree. I think that those folks that are involved need to be included and be
Yes.
accessible to the general public so they can see that. So I completely agree with
Yeah.
that. I thought there was a two-part ask.
The second part, which was the first one that I mentioned, which they're proposing only making narrow changes, we hadn't heard previously. They were looking at committing to coming back for other changes, is the fact that code defines a business decision of a sole franchise. And as you heard from me last year on the EMS annual report, we have this rolling evergreen contract, which I don't agree with. And that's related to that.
So what you're proposing is that,
It wouldn't come, so the proposal is it wouldn't come up in this round of the code changes. We would come back to it with code changes when we discuss those next year.
okay, great. I thought I heard we were kind of fast-tracking that part of it, and
No,
okay,
no.
good.
So
But I'm
my
once again registering,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So
Not a
my
problem. Thank you.
understanding is that we would incorporate that with we're going to be bringing pretty significant code changes to you in hopefully early 2021. And that,
So we'll have a work
this is
session
something
on
that, yes,
to learn more about what those are.
yes.
Right. One of the reasons for the Alliance is to relook at how we're doing things, and that's going to entail significant changes to the code as well as, how we're operating in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it will be coming, so we're involved in that and part of that.
Right. The Alliance will make a recommendation to your board, and then your board can obviously discuss that and figure out where you want to go.
So, commission members, if there are any other changes that you would like to ensure that this advisory committee provides to us, better to either raise them today or bring it back here for the board, so that the board is just aware of what you might be interested in versus waiting and then learning later.
And so, am I understanding that you two will be the point persons for this process? So if I have any questions or would like to have some information, you two would be my contact?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great. Next item on our agenda is fiscal year 2020-2021 financial planning and budget update calendar.
Good morning, Chair Harrington. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jack Liang, Director of Support Services. I am with you today to discuss one of my favorite topics, the Washington County budget process. And not any budget, the Washington County budget process. In the last year's budget season, your board has expressed interest in continuing to be informed on the budget process throughout this fall. And that is partially due to that we're in a little bit different economic environment right now. I have made multiple updates to your board about how our external factors of the economy and the internal operations are different than the last couple of years' trend. So today, I am providing an update on the 2021 budget calendar summary as part of our plan to continue to navigate and monitor the county's financial conditions, as well as keeping your board informed and involved throughout the whole process. So you can see that with the handout that's included with the packet, the format is the one that you're used to seeing from last year, and then it's actually laid out our plan for the entire year for this next fiscal year. Starting in July to September 2020, that is when the CEO and the support services finance staff is leading a fiscal year 2021 financial information gathering. As you know, many departments actually have the on-the-ground information about their state funding, their federal funding, their regular business operations. So we're actually playing a coordination role to gather all of that information to identify any changes or volatilities that's happening in the departments, as well as the general fund. So the first quarter of the fiscal year, we have been doing that, and there's some results that's being brought together. We're in the process of consolidating that and hopefully bring that information to you soon. And then starting in October, that is where I scheduled a financial update. That's the first one for this fiscal year, and that is scheduled for October 13th. And that one will include a consolidation of all of the information we have gathered in the first quarter of the fiscal year, as well as a summary of the state's September economic update. So we should have some result from the state's economic update from that. It still may not necessarily have the final word on the state's budget for the next biennial, but at least it provides some hint on where the state is going into the next couple of years. And then throughout October, from October 17th to October 28th, with the help of Elizabeth Mazara-Myers, she's leading an organization of this community investment conversations, and that is one in each commissioner's district, and there are 4 in total. And that's between October 17th through October 28th. October 27th, within that date, we are also scheduled to adopt fiscal year 2021 fall budget adjustment. That is a regular scheduled budget adjustment that we do every fall, and usually that's used to catch up any changes that's happening in the departments. So that particular budget adjustment is not necessarily designed to respond to the community investment conversations or to respond to any of the new economic environment that we're navigating. It's really meant to respond to departmental changes that's much needed in the fall. And then we have a later budget adjustment that's designed for more strategic maneuvering. Starting in November 17th, that's where we would like to take a work session and brief on your board on the community investment conversation. As mentioned, Elizabeth is in the leader seat on that briefing with your board. And then the next item is a date to be determined. It's a Board of County Commissioners discussion on county priorities, goals, and directions to staff. And this may be one session, maybe multiple sessions, and that's actually one consideration for your board. It's the timing and the format of that discussion. Starting in December 1st is our target date to provide a preliminary budget instructions to the departments. And that's for both the rest of the fiscal year 2021 and also the upcoming fiscal year 21-22. And throughout the month of December, staff would also like to use that time to develop a county financial plan to reflect your board's directions and priorities. And the reason I call it a financial plan is because we're hoping to develop a plan for more than 1 year, rather than, that's why it's not necessarily just a planned budget for the next fiscal year, but it's more of a little bit of a long-term view or near-term view for the county's financial plan into the financial future. And then that gets us to January. January 12th, we have a work session briefing on the county financial plan. Hopefully, we have that well developed by then. And then January 26th is our scheduled next financial update for your board. Between February 1st to February 28th, that's where the department's starting to develop the 21-22 preliminary budget. And by then, we should have a fairly completed financial plan. We should have good instructions to the department, should have good information on the economy as much as we can see from that. And then that's when the department actually takes those directions from CAO, from your board, to develop the budget for next fiscal year. And then in March, that's where our regular budget drill starts. So March 16th, that's where we adopt fiscal year 2021 spring budget adjustment. And that is one that's designed to reflect the near-term aspects of the financial plan, which reflects your board's priorities and directions. And then March 22nd to April 2nd, that is where the department budget is being presented to CAO, and that's for the fiscal year 21-22 budget. Going into April 2nd to April 28th, that whole month is for development of CAO proposed budget. As the department complete their numbers in the budget in each one of the org units, that's where CAO and finance team work closely to finalize the narratives, the analysis, and all the taking and tying into the budget document. And then April 22nd, it's also the financial update number 3 that we have scheduled. So April 28th is our target date for next year. April 28th of 2021 is our target date for next year to get the proposed budget ready for the budget committee to review. And then April 30th is our target date to get the budget hearing notice published. That's our regular budget timeline. And going into May, that's the fiscal year 21-22 budget scheduling. We have tentatively scheduled May 12th and May 13th for the budget committee meetings. And as you know, that we have a couple of special districts. Those are falling on the May 12th. And then the May 13th is the main county budget committee, as well as a service district for lighting, number 1. May 25th is when we schedule the fiscal year 21-22 budget committee public hearing. And that is when the public has the opportunity to come in and actually make public testimonies to the budget committee. June 15th is when we schedule the next financial update. That's the 4th one in the year. And then also we have scheduled on that day to adopt the fiscal year 21-22 budget fee schedule and the pay plan for the next fiscal year. So that completes a summary of the budget calendar. Obviously, there's a lot of staff actions that's not included in here that happens in between. That's throughout the budget development process. So with that, I be ready to answer any of your questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. So we have listened to we've had our 6 listening sessions, and we gathered a lot of information, particularly specifically designated, I guess, at our Sheriff's Department and all the aspects of that. What do we hope to gain from our community investment conversation?
From my understanding, the community investment conversation is a little more targeted toward Washington County as a whole, and also it's a little more focused on the county's financial management. So my understanding is that the listening session is more focused on the sheriff's office, especially the body-worn camera program, but the investment conversation, the purpose is really to get both provide a little more transparency on the county's budget process, the county's financial planning process to the community, the ones that participate, obviously, and then also provide the public an opportunity to bring feedback back to the community, back to the county. There is actually a work session overview scheduled next week for Elizabeth to be a part of the presentation to brief your board on the plan for that community investment conversation.
Okay. I guess I'll wait to hear Elizabeth's report on that, and I'm not necessarily opposed to these, but the budget process is very complex, as you know, and it's always interesting. I guess we reach out to our community and say, what do you think? This is our prioritization for where we're going to spending our money, your money, taxpayer money, and then I guess solicit feedback that is really, really surface level because of the complexity of the whole process. So I'll wait to hear Elizabeth's input on why we are doing that. Again, those are intensive conversations, I guess we have, and I'm not opposed to that. It's just again, we're asking them a very hard question. Second was, we know that the state's going to reduce their funding of several of our programs. When will those cuts actually take effect?
That is actually a really good question. That's part of the information we're trying to gather from the departments. I think some departments are already hearing more certain information from their state departments. Some are not. Actually, many are not yet. There's a lot of anticipation into the September economic update as well as the state's decision on their budget next year. So, I mean, honestly, until the short answer to your question is until the state actually come out with their proposed budget for next biennium, it's really hard to say for us. So we're just speculating.
Basically, we've got a budget right now that anticipates we're going to get this money, but actually, the cut could actually impact us during this budget cycle as soon as January 1, I'm guessing, and so we would have to make some budget adjustments when we find out more about that, and that's what this whole process is here. And yeah, this is a great outline. I really appreciate this. This is good, Jack.
Thank you. And just to add a little to that is that's what I meant is from the September state economic update, we may be able to read some hint of what the state's budget is going to be looks like. My recommendation to the board and to the county is still to be conservative in this uncertain time of the economy, of the external environment. So that's part of the development and planning process that we're hoping to go through in the next 3 to 6 months. Really is to get the departments and the county ready to handle any situations. We may actually come up with very, multiple scenarios on how to handle what's coming to us.
That's good. I'm really happy for your work on this, and again, especially on this budget calendar. This is really good 12-month snapshot, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Whaley.
I'm
But
sorry, no, go ahead.
just for the community investment conversations, this will be our second year of inviting our community members to the front end of our budget work. We learned a lot of things last year about the need to really bring people along to take a very bureaucratic looking document and to bring it to life and to better tell our really good story about the work that's being done each and every day to support our community. So as Jack mentioned, we will hear more. This is a proposal coming from me to you as part of how we continue our work together. I'm really excited about it. I think you're right to note the feedback that we've been getting from the listening sessions. And so I'll later enumerate some areas where I think I assume we'll be getting some more feedback, so we may need to consider some adjustments. Commissioner Rogers.
Yeah, the last time we had those listening sessions, there was a lot of requests, obviously, for money, and people are wanting particular programs and wanting some specificity if that's going to happen. And just from my standpoint, I wish those were not in October, but in November. A key indicator to me would be what the tax collections are in November. If we see a downward trend in those in early November, there's a whole lot of adjustments that are going to have to be made, not just adds. I mean, they're going to be subtractions. So just from timing, I wish it had been after the tax due date so that we would be able to see those trends. Secondly, what would be interesting to me is how are we trending in terms of fees, particularly in the building, transportation area, How are we trending in terms of taxes? Because, I mean, there's some things that we have to specifically do in government. A lot of things we do are because they're good programs to conduct, but they're not the core services necessarily. And so I'd like to see how our taxes are trending. I'd like to see how our fees are trending. And then anything that you can say, and I know as a fellow CPA, as about three of us sitting here, when you're forecasting, it's really difficult without some pretty solid information. So I'd like to see some of the assumptions that you're making in terms of how you are forecasting, and that probably is the nerdy stuff that maybe just me is interested in, but I'd like to see how you're coming up with those. And then I'd also like to see what your significant unknowns are and contingencies, and I can name a few. One, in regard to COVID-related lack of legislation, you could have a number of cases that would be very costly. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of the state suit on timber. It's unknown. Contingency, nothing you can do to put it in the numbers, I understand, but it's a contingency, as you know, like in our footnotes on contingency. PERS, we don't know what's going to happen on that, if anything. So I'd like to know in your mind, because you're a smart guy, what contingencies are you looking at? And just not numbers. You can't. I know you can't put numbers on, but what's spinning in that mind of yours that maybe we should be aware of it after we see taxes and after we see fees? What else what's the other foot, that might fall?
Could I recommend, because we went through that not too long ago as a board, could I recommend that the two of you get together and have that conversation? Because some of what you're asking for, we're going to get on October 13th, backed up with actuals.
We did talk about it, but I never heard anything back, but we can talk.
Yes, so definitely that's part of the plan. It's for every one of our financial updates. So we would like to bring back the current situation of what we're seeing, what we know already, and what we do not know. What are some of the risk factors? And that's part of the information that we're gathering from July to September right now, is to navigate some of those differences. I mean, from a general term, many of our taxes and the business fees are being impacted by COVID-19. So I can say with confidence our number one unknown at this point is really the length and the strength of this pandemic, how long it lasts really, and how does that affect the economy. But we can bring more detailed information back as a October 13th financial update.
Commissioner Scouten, anything?
Yeah, just a quick typos, I think, on these dates. Should December 2019 actually be December 2020?
Yes, sorry about that typo.
And
Good catch.
January, February, March,
Our 2021.
April, May, and June would be 2020.
Those will be 2021. Yep, we will get that updated.
Could I also recommend, as to help the reader, is that when you have FY 2021 and then FY 21-22, that you use some kind of way to distinguish those two through a font or a background color or something,
Okay.
so that at least our public, who may not quite follow the nuance of
Fiscal years.
the fiscal year change. Because sometimes you have to read it carefully to know which fiscal year you're talking about.
Yep.
So if we have a way visually to identify that year one, fiscal year one and fiscal year two are different, that would be, I think, helpful. Well, since you're making changes.
Yep, I mean, we actually go through a couple iterations of updates for this budget calendar, just depending on the date changes or any schedule changes. So we will definitely be incorporating your suggestions into those. And thank you for catching the typo, Commissioner Scotten.
Well, I think if you do an update based upon this work session and put it on your page for moving forward, that'll be great.
Yep, we'll do that.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's, I think overall this is a good schedule, and I appreciate the sort of the framing that we've got here in terms of chronology, so thank you for that.
I just have a few comments. It takes a lot of work for an organization to put together its budget and to do so in a way that is thorough, follows Oregon law, GASB rules, all that jazz. So it's, as this enumerates, there's a rock solid 3.5 to 4.5 months of work to develop the budget. I've mentioned a couple of things last year, and I'm finding myself reiterating those here. There are 5 different budgets for Washington County's umbrella.
Yep.
With this budget calendar, we have 2 weeks as participants of the budget committee to review that information and be prepared for budget meetings. That's really tight when you've got 5 budgets to go through. So I asked last year for us to consider, and please figure out a way to give us a little bit more time, and I'm saying it again. So certainly, I looked at the 2021 calendar, and our budget adoption is on June 15th, and I understand you have to turn around and get final documents filed. And if we were to adopt it on the 22nd, we'd have to make sure we have a business meeting on the 22nd. That would still give you, I'm not sure if that gives you a full week, because I don't know if the fiscal year absolutely starts July 1st or if it starts on the Monday, the 28th. It's that old Intel calendar versus the published calendar problem. So I think we might want to explore giving ourselves 1 more week of time, if possible.
Yes, we can consider that.
The other thing related to the calendar is last year, we added a second meeting related to the Washington County budget. And I think we're going to need that again. And that relates to my following the comments I'm about to make. The good news is our public is responding to the opportunities to engage with us. The bad news is our community is responding to the opportunity to engage with us. And I use that word bad loosely because it just means more time, more energy, more engagement. But I think it's also a reflection of the pressures that we are all under societally. We're getting all kinds of feedback, including through social media, that there are areas of interest from our community, and we'll get more feedback from the official listening sessions. But for this next fiscal year, I imagine that, and I'll keep saying this, we have a really strong story to tell about how we as an agency and we as a board are investing in our community. Public safety is one of those areas. And I am very proud of our investments in public safety, the fact that our community approved a public safety increase investment in May of this year in public safety. But a lot of our community members don't have yet the opportunity to understand the different aspects of public safety as we've had the opportunity to understand. And I think we have an opportunity before us to advance that understanding. Health and Human Services, looking at that from the aspect of our community needs. Yes, there are unmet needs, and I think that we should talk more about how to address some of those. And we're doing so in some of our program investment work that the board is working on already. With regard to our general fund, we on this board and our budget committee members understand what the general fund is all about. That includes supporting our general government work, but also having discretionary revenue to put into use in our community. Once again, an area of opportunity of understanding. We've noted on this board, and Commissioner Rogers was really getting at it from the aspect of challenges and wanting to understand the nuts and bolts a little bit further, the actual numbers. We're navigating some financial waters here that the agency hasn't had to navigate since the Great Recession, but certainly our current economic crisis is different than that, which really touches on the economic struggles and the recovery that we're all hoping to be in next fiscal year. But we already know that we've been forewarned from the state that the next biennium, the 2 years following the one we're currently in, are going to be very difficult. And on top of that, we'll have public meetings and get more feedback, which we will just carry forward on our journey together with our community into future years. This isn't a once and done, it's a journey. And I feel blessed to have the level of understanding on this board, as well as the excellence of our agency to tell our good story, to engage with our community so they have an opportunity to better understand that good story, and for us to continue our journey together as a community. So that's my input.
I just have one more quick question. With the CARES money, you've had obviously a lot of additional accounting requirements, and since it's going to be a single audit requirement, and we have sub-recipients, I know you hired a couple of people. How's that all going to work in time, in terms of your time to manage this budget as well? Is your staffing adequate, not only to manage $100 million of grants to other organizations and monitor them and make certain that they're following federal requirements, and do this as well? Do you have the staffing to do all that?
So thank you for asking that question, Commissioner Rogers. Our staffing currently is adequate in terms of risk mitigation. So we're managing the grant particularly well. We're working with our auditors actively on going into this audit season on the single audit and everything. I should say that everyone in finance is working very hard on this issue, and there are definitely staff that's putting in overtime to make sure that we are looking everywhere and then managing each one of the programs with federal compliance requirements. So the staff is adequate. It's a little tight, but adequate at this moment.
That was diplomatic, but I know that the money runs out in December.
Right.
And the requirements are for the year that goes through June 30th of next year, so you're going to have a lot of work in January, February, and closing out. And I don't want particularly an answer. I just want you to say, yeah, I promise to not be shy about coming back and saying, I'm not staffed with these things. We keep throwing things at you, and I don't know whether you're staffed to do them all, so.
Stay tuned for the last item on our work session agenda.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Rogers. And your point is well taken. And if I see there's risks associated with our resources or staff, I'll definitely not be shy to bring it up to CEO and your board for consideration. At this moment, just to hopefully provide you a little more information, is our current staff that's in central finance that's currently working on CARES Act grant management are all existing staff that's redirected from other priorities. While those other priorities are still instrumental for finance work, but from a prioritization point of view, managing the CARES Act is our #1 priority right now. So they are existing staff rather than additional staff that we brought on. But your point is well taken. We'll come back for additional resources if that's needed.
So I see Elizabeth on here. I was wondering if she wanted to comment about the community initiative.
Well, we have that coming in our work session next week.
Yeah, I just saw that she zoomed in, so I didn't know if she had something she wanted to say there.
I don't know if I'm on or not. I'm happy to make a few comments.
I think we should just leave it till next week, please.
Great. Of course. Yeah, just want to make myself.
All right. And Commissioner Rogers is available for about $13 an hour if you need some help.
What a
you know.
rate,
Yeah, we're trying to give him some additional income. sources.
I think his rate is much higher than that. So.
I think that's it.
All right. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Let's see. We're doing pretty well. We get to have a 15-minute break before we go into our board meeting at 10 o'clock. So we'll see you all back here in 15 minutes for our regular board meeting, and then we'll reconvene at, well, do we want to try and reconvene?
Let's do it earlier if we can.
Can we do that, Alan?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So if our board meeting ends early, we'll pick back up. Are your staff members for item number 4 and 5 going to be ready to do that earlier? Okay, great. Okay, great. Thanks. See you all back here at 10.